This is the south gate of the Eau Claire Speedway, the last remaining evidence of an entryway into this racetrack. This racetrack started July 4, 1955. It was called the Ideal Speedway, and it changed hands many times, called the Eau Claire Speedway, the Eau Claire Raceway, Auto Memory Speedway, and other names like that were used. This was the main southern entrance and exit. There was a ticket stand close by, and people mostly came in from the north side, but this was the entryway for the fans of the racetrack, and they came here. These trees were not here, by the way. There isn't much left of the racetrack today, except for the gate. And this section I'm looking at here, I'm heading into the property where the pits was, because the pits were on the east side of the racetrack. Early on, they were somewhere part in the center of the track, and they quit doing that. They had the pits on the right side here, the east end of the racetrack. Now this section here is all overgrown with prairie grass, wild trees, and these trees were planted. This was the Eau Claire Speedway, ran until about 1978, and the racetrack was involved in that area. Now in this circle of trees ahead of me, we're going to run into what the racetrack actually was. And really there's not much left here today. Now the houses in the background in this picture, the houses were in the fan parking area. And I got some debris over here on the left hand side. That could be one of the ticket stands. There was a ticket location on both sides of the one on the entranceway, the north and the south side. There's only a couple of bricks left, and I believe this piece of wood here, part of the debris, came from the racetrack location, but today it's just basically scrap, and that's what's left of it, of this brick foundation right here. Right down here on the ground we do have a brick foundation, which is the only thing left of a piece here, and there's much left whatsoever. A lot of famous drivers ran here. Tommy Nesbitt, Kenny Mann. You had Darrell Hendrickson, Bunky Hayes, Phil Prusak, Punky Manor. You had them all. Red Steffen, Leon Plank. It was Jim Gruen, Ron Goss, Roger Turk. Many of the drivers through history in this area. When this track closed, most of the drivers went to Red Cedar Speedway and Rice Lake, Cedar Lake. But the Eau Claire was done. This little dish indentation here, you're now heading towards where the racetrack was. I think I'm on the edge of the racetrack right now. I'm looking at turn number 1. I'm standing in turn number 2, and I can see the bank as it goes around. You can actually see where the racetrack was, because I'm walking down the middle of would be the racetrack clay surface. Just on the edge of it, you can see a little indentation along the edge where the clay stops. And over the years, this has grown up with everything else you can think of. A lot of action was here years ago, but Today the most races are between the bugs. I'm going down into a dip here, and the pits, since they were on the east side, the center of the racetrack was low, and the infield, and that's about where I am right now. I have another item of debris. This thing to me looks like one of the light posts that stood in the middle of the racetrack. I think that's just about where I am right now because somebody cut it down. This post here has been chewed up here, and the ground is not an actual tree. It's a man-made telephone post. So I'm looking here at a post that was the inside light around the racetrack on the inside. Now there we have the light fixture right there. I'm correct on this. This is one of the light posts that are only thing basically remains besides the front gate is this light post that shows up at the Speedway. So I'm actually in the infield, heavily overgrown, because all the time the rain would come and it would fill up with water. So sometimes you have standing water. And I'm looking around and I can't find anything else except over here that remains of a possible racetrack. Now this here to me looks like somebody brought in some garbage and dumped it. So I don't think this pile of debris here. Now this concrete does look like part of a structure that used to be at the racetrack. But again, I can't prove that. I only know that light post is an original, and so is the gate. But I think this is debris brought in by a owner of the property who's had to control the land for decades. Because here we have, looks like part of an axle stuck into the top of a piece of concrete. I don't know how that fits into place. There's other debris inside the trees here, but I do think that some of this stuff was brought in. It could have been from the old racetrack location, but all dragged out and put into one place. So there ain't much here, but a lot of strawberries, wild strawberries, stuff like that. Now, we do have another permanent structure here. Now this could be the base for the announcer's tower. It could be the round the back they had a concession stand. So there's only a few things here that I only can recognize for 100% surety of the gate and the post. Now as we head out this side, this was customer parking, and that white stuff is just debris brought in later on by somebody and construction material that was dumped here. So I'm heading back into where the racetrack was, and I see that this at times was used as a garbage dump for storage of building materials and building debris. But there's nothing else that's here. Well, I'm looking around, and I'm already about the end of the racetrack. This racetrack was only a quarter mile in diameter, and that's all it was. So I'm at the end of that, and I'm almost at the end of the video here, because there's nothing else here that I can find from the racetrack except for the post and the gate. However, now here it looks like we have another light post. This must have been on the one light lamp on turn number 3 and 4 near the pits. I believe that is an actual, looks like a man-made post sitting there, but I can't be sure of that. I do know that the one lamppost and the gate. Okay, now here we're looking at the racetrack again. I can just see the outline in the grass. I can just see the curvature of where this thing is on a slight bank, which the Eau Claire racetrack was on a slight bank. And I'm looking at turn number 3. The back straightaway of the pits is over here. This is the pit area, and this is the turn. So I'm actually rocking on top of the racetrack where it used to be. There were several people who've lost their lives in this racetrack. One of them was Pistol Pete. He had a heart attack and turned off the racetrack and went into the fence, and the time that they found him, he had passed away. The only other one that I can think of right now that was the most tragic was where one person back about 1968 fell from the water truck when it was in motion and was run over. So tragedy was at this racetrack, and those 2 deaths I don't think are the only ones, but that's the 2 that come to mind. Was a driver that just had a heart attack doing what he liked to do best, which is racing, and the other one was an accident of nobody's fault. It just circumstances where things just didn't work out right. So this is the area, and I'm going back now to turn number 1 and 2, and this would be 3 way at the end of the video here. And so is my history of what remains of the Eau Claire Speedway that was first built in July 4, 1955. It was opened that weekend, and it closed in 78. Now today is May of 2015, and there isn't much left. If you didn't know the racetrack history or know what it looked like, even that gate to you would be a mystery. The Eau Claire Speedway, the quarter-mile dirt racetrack that could be heard across Eau Claire when it ran, but it only survived since 1978.